There's a moment every gardener runs into sooner or later, usually sometime after that first enthusiastic attempt at composting. The kitchen fills with the scent of freshly brewed coffee. The grounds go into a bucket or straight into the garden bed, and the expectation is always the same. Rich nitrogen, darker soil, stronger plants. Yet weeks pass, the soil looks unchanged, and the plants hardly respond. It's a frustration shared by countless growers, from beginners experimenting in container gardens to seasoned farmers who've walked the same land for decades. Coffee grounds have built a reputation as a miracle input, and while they absolutely have value, they don't deliver nitrogen the way most people think. The missing piece is the part nobody talks about, and once you understand it, soil suddenly behaves differently. Beds respond faster, compost heats better, and your plants actually get the nitrogen you thought you were adding all along. It's a fix so simple that it has appeared in various forms for centuries. Early farmers from East Africa to the Middle East knew that nitrogen didn't appear magically. It had to be unlocked, paired, and fed. That's the thread we'll pull today. Coffee grounds need carbon partners before they can release nitrogen. The misconception around coffee grounds comes from the assumption that because they're rich in nitrogen on paper, they deliver that nitrogen quickly. The grounds themselves are about 2% nitrogen, which sounds promising, but nitrogen in organic material isn't available until microbes break the material down. Coffee grounds are dense, compact, and fungal dominant when left alone, which slows the entire decomposition process. Without something to balance them, the microbes won't multiply fast enough to release anything useful to your soil. History gives us plenty of clues about this, you know. Traditional composting in ancient China used a deliberate layering of greens and browns to ensure steady decomposition. And in 17th century Europe, farmers added straw to manure piles not because they liked the aesthetics, but because they understood that carbon feeds the microbes that unlock nitrogen. Coffee grounds are essentially a green in composting terms. They need a brown, you see. The missing ingredient is carbon in the form of dry browns. If there is one thing coffee grounds absolutely must have, it is a carbon source to bind with. Without it, they sit and compact, growing mould, souring the soil and locking nitrogen inside instead of releasing it. The simplest fix is to combine coffee grounds with dry, shredded material. Leaves, straw, cardboard, sawdust, or even dried grass clippings. When you mix grounds with something carbon-rich, you create a balanced environment where decomposition can take place efficiently. The microbes multiply, heat builds, and the nitrogen locked in the grounds becomes available for plant roots. A good practical ratio is 1 part coffee grounds to 3 parts carbon material. For example, if you have a small bucket of grounds, mix it with a larger bucket filled with shredded dry leaves or torn cardboard. This blend reduces compaction, increases airflow, and gives decomposers the energy source they need to get moving. It's tempting to throw coffee grounds straight onto the soil surface, but this slows everything down. A better approach is to create mixed layers. Start with a base of shredded leaves about 2 fingers deep, then sprinkle a thin, even layer of coffee grounds over that, followed again by leaves. When these layers are lightly forked together, decomposition begins almost immediately because you've given the microbes both nitrogen and carbon in the same space. This method works in raised beds, compost piles, and even small balcony containers. One of the most effective techniques I've seen is trench-style composting. To start this process, dig a narrow trench between your crop rows. Then fill it with alternating layers of coffee grounds and shredded cardboard. Once that's done, cover it with soil and let the microbes work their magic underground. Over the course of a month or two, you'll notice a remarkable difference in plant vigour along that trench line. It's quite fascinating, really. This improvement occurs because the nitrogen has become plant-available gradually and naturally. It's a wonderful example of nature's efficiency. Nitrogen availability comes from microbial digestion, so really the goal is always to encourage microbial life. Culturally, this principle shows up across centuries. Indigenous farmers in the Amazon built fertile terra preta soils by mixing organic waste with charcoal, giving microbes a stable habitat. Medieval households kept ash piles that unintentionally created zones of microbial activity. Now, when it comes to your coffee grounds, the focus should really be on supporting those microbes directly. Moisture needs to be present, but not, excessive. Oxygen has to reach the mixture, and the carbon-nitrogen balance ought to stay close to 30:1. That's actually why shredded material is preferable to whole leaves or, say, large pieces of cardboard. The increased surface area lets microbes colonize much more quickly. A gardener can, test moisture quite simply by squeezing the mixture. If it holds together loosely without dripping, then the microbial environment is, in fact, ideal. There are several direct applications that consistently deliver results. In a compost pile, bury coffee grounds in the centre, surrounded by leaves and straw. This creates heat that speeds decomposition. For container gardeners, mix coffee grounds into a bucket of soaked cardboard strips, let it sit for 3 days, then fold that mixture into potting soil. This creates a slow-release nitrogen source, perfect for tomatoes and leafy greens. If you prefer a field method, just collect a week's worth of grounds and mix them with sun-dried grass clippings. Let the blend rest in a sack for about a week, then spread it along your crop rows before rainfall. The water helps distribute the nitrogen as microbes break down the mixture right there in place. What all these approaches share is the same principle. Coffee grounds are never used alone. So the key lesson here is that coffee grounds actually unlock nitrogen only through, balanced decomposition. Countless gardeners struggle with slow soil improvement simply because the grounds they add just cannot break down without a bit of help. But when you pair those materials with something carbon-rich, decomposition really picks up speed, nitrogen becomes available, and, soil structure improves dramatically. This is actually a practice rooted in old composting traditions, and honestly, it's backed by our modern understanding of soil biology. Once you get the hang of this balance, every single handful of kitchen waste becomes a tool, rather than just a guess. Thank you for learning with us here at FarmLab. If you found this guide valuable, please do subscribe, share it with your fellow growers, and help us keep building a community rooted in knowledge that lasts.